Moving on to the, I guess not upcoming draft, but this year's draft, you've been keeping a close eye on some of the young guns coming through. There was 2 academy games in recent times. One of the big names is Levi Ashcroft, which is Will Ashcroft's younger brother and the son of Marcus, Brisbane champion from back in the early 2000s. Is there anyone else, including Ashcroft, that you've kind of liked so far in the early part of 2024?
Yeah, at least taking into the 2 academy games, like we haven't had too much talent league to go off, but you know, enough to give us glimpses. But Ashcroft's certainly the best across the 2 academy games. Like they lost both to Coburg and Footscray, but this is more just seeing what these kind of teenagers, we're talking 17-year-olds, can do against experienced talent, like this is, you know, VFL, and on the weekend obviously up against Footscray, AFL talent as well. So we saw Riley Sanders have a pretty big performance after getting dropped, and obviously he's coming up against some ex-teammates and players at a level that he's more comfortable with, but he was one of the best on for Footscray. Oscar Baker was in there, Caleb Poulter, Ryan Gardner, Charlie Clark. So there was heaps of AFL listed players for the Dogs, and Levi Ashcroft best on ground for the AFL Academy, that is, and that follows a game against Coburg that he was pretty dominant in midfield. 33 disposals was the highest across both sides, and then I think it was another 27 or so against Footscray on the weekend. So he's really strengthened his case as the pick 1 selection, which seemed to go one better than his brother Will, who went at pick 2, even though Will was probably the best player in his draft class as well. So it's going to be it's pretty open field all up. So you look at Ashcroft, Josh Smiley, who was probably, if it wasn't Ashcroft, he was probably the best midfielder over the weekend, and he's about 195 centimetres, I think, which is, you're looking at a Patrick Cripps build of just an absolute bull inside, and can have a fair bit of in the front half of the field as well. So he was, better over the weekend than compared to the Coburg game, but still pretty decent across both. Finn O'Sullivan made his comeback against the Dogs after a broken thumb, kind of kept him to 1 game prior to this week. So he was quiet, but I think going off the runs he put on the board last year, he'll be another one in that pick 1 contention. Sid Draper's another one who's been sidelined for the start of the year through injury. So it's kind of, I think they're the names that you're probably looking at for that kind of pick 1 consideration, and Ashcroft certainly might be the one in front at this point of the year. Another name who's really, I think, strengthened their case as maybe a top 5, probably top 10, but maybe a top 5 consideration is Luke Traynor. So Sandringham Dragons key defender, 194 centimetres, good intercept and pretty good one-on-one. But I think he'd probably be better used if he was that second option who can fly across. But I think both games he's across both AFL Academy games, he's probably averaging close to 20 touches, 5 marks, and just really dominant in the air and clean by foot, which is really what you're after for the ball-winning defender at his height, and can just move the ball cleanly. So he's done really well. He was best on in the loss to Coburg, and then again one of the AFL Academy's best over the weekend as well. Just some updates on some familiar names as well. So we've got the Camperelli twins, Ben and Lucas, both quite strong in the first game, a bit quieter in the second. Probably similar can be said for Leonardo Lombard, who's Gold Coast Academy talent. Other Tide player like Tyler Welsh, Adelaide father-son, I think he kicked another goal. So, showing signs and up against some pretty strong talent for a key position teenager. It was pretty good. Tom Gross, solid. Jagger Smith, again, solid. Job Shanahan seems to be doing pretty well out of Bendigo as one of the key forwards. It is a very midfield-dominant class, which is probably why you can highlight guys like Welsh, Shanahan and Traynor earlier, who I think will have a bit of swing in probably draft rankings, just given the desire to select outside of midfielders, and some of the clubs, Hawthorn or North Melbourne, who probably are more inferred key position talent, but when they get to draft night and if they're holding the top 2 picks or 2 of the top 5 picks, it's going to be quite interesting to see how that all plays out. So that's kind of a bit of an update. Obviously, they'll have national champs right around the corner, more Coates Talent League for the Victorian players and some of the Northern State players, but obviously plenty to keep an eye on in the Sample and Waffle as well.